Big earnings mover this morning isn't the ones we just talked about. Sure, they're moving. It's out of left field. It's Boston Beer. And this is because apparently it is not a hard seltzer summer, folks. Boston Beer coming out, the chairman Jim Koch saying the hard seltzer category and overall beer industry were softer than we had anticipated. The company's second quarter profit per share, $4.75, $6.61 is what analysts were anticipating. Quite a miss there. And the company is now cutting its forecast for the full year as well. Guys, we have been watching the hard seltzer trend. Yep. And, you know, we sort of got some glimmers that there maybe all was not well in carbonated alcoholic beverages.
Well, look, we talk a lot on this program, I think, as a lot of people would, about what do you see when you go to the store, right? You don't have to have an advanced degree to go into a liquor store these days, and you can see there's a lot of seltzer sitting around. So this quarter really took a turn for the worse when this call started, and there's a lot of grisly details in here, and we can get into some of them. But just right at the top, Bonnie Herzog, analyst over at Goldman Sachs, begins her question to Boston Beer management. I guess I don't even know where to begin, and goes on to say, we know the category is slowing, and sort of like, can you please explain yourself with, you know, sort of what you're thinking here? Now, Herzog and her team did come out and downgrade the stock, and Sozzi talked to that in a second, but just want to go through a little bit of what Dave Berwick, CEO at Boston Beer, then said in response, and I think this really couldn't be more troubling for the industry at large, and he said time after time he doesn't want to forecast the industry. He's just trying to forecast the Truly brand and where Boston Beer fits in there. But he says during the May and June stock-up overlap, so the overlap of the COVID period, we kind of hit that inflection point in the S-curve where things go from high double-digit growth rate to a low double-digit growth rate. So growth's coming down almost by 50%. And he adds, and that was the first signal really as we got into May and June, and we had expected to hit that second bump better. So Saz, when you basically saying the business slowed dramatically and we didn't manage it as well as we thought we were going to when we hit that bump, that's why the stock's down 20% here.
When you have to talk about the S-curve on an earnings call, you're
good.
probably not having a good day, and you probably need a 12-pack of hard seltzers here. But just playing off of what Herzog, really, Herzog at Goldman Sachs, she used to be at Wells Fargo, very respected beverage analyst, coming out here, as you mentioned, Myles, downgrading the stock, she's saying, quote, we are very surprised by the magnitude of this quarter's miss. She's also going on to say the hard seltzer category slowdown is real and more pronounced. And this is something we highlighted on this show about a month ago. You walk into a lot of convenience stores. The stores are overrun with hard seltzer. There's no real true innovation in the category. It's just carbonated water in a can, a little bit of alcohol, charging a premium price, and that is not going to work. But I will note this, too. What you're seeing at Boston Beer is not necessarily the case throughout the whole entire industry. While growth is slowing, some companies with some new brands are actually growing their sales. And one of those brands is Constellation Brands. They're making Corona Hard Seltzer, and we asked Bill Newlands what he thinks about the state of the industry right now.
Well, we still see that as a big growth driver in the high-end part of the beer business. And our business is doing very well. As you know, we did 10 million cases in our first year with literally one SKU. We've just introduced a second variety pack, which is doing very well. It's almost half the size of the first variety pack already. And we just introduced Limonada here in the last few weeks. And we're very excited about that product. So we think the seltzer business is going to continue to be a growth driver, probably not at the accelerated levels that it has in prior years, but it can still see 30, 40, 50% growth this year, which will be very healthy.
Bill, do you think there will be a hard seltzer shakeout? I'll use me as an example. I go over to my local convenience store. I mean, the shelves are overrun with choices by some brands I've never even heard of. What's the end game here?
We do think that'll happen, much like the light beer category, where you see a few to several critical brands that tend to be the strong players. We think that's going to happen in seltzer as well. And we certainly expect to be there with our Corona Hard Seltzer.
As you've seen, the shakeout that we talked about there and we referenced It's already starting to happen, Myles. Last week, Molson Coors discontinued Coors Seltzer. Maybe not necessarily a fan of that brand, but that is discontinued. I expect more of these brands to completely go away and ultimately be dominated probably by a Truly, by a White Claw, maybe one or two brands. Corona is making some good headway there, but overall, I mean, just too much of this garbage in the store. Let's just be real.
Well, and it's not just hard seltzer, guys. When I was filling in on the 11 to 1 show last week, we had a conversation with the Drizzly CEO. They had done a survey and asked consumers about hard seltzer consumption, but also about ready-to-drink consumption. They're not actually the same thing, apparently. A ready-to-drink cocktail is a different designation, a different category than hard seltzer. But I think consumers sometimes lump them all together. And so when you see the sort of winnowing out, I wonder if the winnowing out will happen collectively between those two categories, that we'll just see overall fewer. I mean, I still consider isn't a hard seltzer sort of cocktail in a can, but apparently alcohol companies don't consider it to be.
Yes.
So I don't know.
There was a long discussion of this on the call as well, Julie, around how much share. So the math that Boston Beer, I think Dave Berg was answering the question, presented on the call is 8% of the hard seltzer category, like ready-to-drink cocktails have 8% of share. And then of that 8%, 2% of it, so 25% of the ready-to-drink category is High Noon. Now, he was trying to make, or Boston Beer is trying to make this distinction that High Noon is a different occasion. I love to use the word occasion, by the way, in the food space in general. But that High Noon is a different occasion, and they are more expensive. I think it's probably 10 or 12 bucks for a 4-pack of High Noon, where it's maybe 14 or 16 for a 12-pack of a White Claw. But I'd have to exactly check my prices, but like they're directionally correct. So High Noon, a little bit more expensive. It is a vodka soda, I guess you would say, with different flavors, natural flavors, whatever. But
what occasion would you drink that? What occasion
so
would
he
you
was
drink
saying
that
that
versus hard seltzer?
He's saying that it's like higher end. So like maybe you'd serve High Noon at, I don't know,
11 o'clock.
Wedding, like maybe a wedding, but whereas, seltzer is kind of, there's no laws when you're drinking claws vibe, right? So a little bit of a different vibe.
I'll put a pin in this here. The trade right now, it's Diageo, the world's largest liquor maker. The stock's up about 20% year to date. Bars are opening back up. I appreciate that hard seltzer is now becoming on tap at bars, but it's only one tap, and nobody cares about hard seltzer at a bar. You want your tequila, you want your hard liquor.
And they tried to talk about a Suntory agreement Boston Beer has on the call. Analysts weren't really thrilled with that. So, again, stock tells the whole story this morning. And I know that on this Summer Friday, the three of us could go all day on the hard seltzer category. Julie, I don't think you're going to be reaching for one of those, particularly after something different, another adult beverage, but probably not a seltzer for you.
I'm not a hard seltzer person in general. I don't know why.
Maybe
I'm not in the right demo. I'm not really sure.